So I'm sure you saw the title of this video and you probably were thinking, how is that even a thing or how is that possible? And the truth is, this is the reality. I really don't know how to review a game like this. And that's because I dearly like this game, its story overall, and the franchise and the way it's been rebooted. And seeing the way Ragnarok had some things that disappointed me, it made things very complicated overall. So, in trying to wrap my mind around how to review the game, I found out that I was actually spending a lot more brain power trying to come up with some kind of a review structure or paradigm that I just finally said, man, it's not going to be as easy as it is. This game, God of War Ragnarok, is very complicated. So what I'll do in this video is probably tell you about the things that make things complicated, and then maybe you can go ahead and form your opinion about how you think I've been able to experience the game overall, and maybe some of the missteps that I made in expecting certain things that were probably not supposed to be expected when playing the game. So I really like God of War, the reboot, and the entirety of the franchise overall. 2018's God of War was one of my favorite games that I've ever played. I've played it multiple times, have it on multiple platforms, and still am playing it till date because the game is actually so much fun and I enjoy it a lot. So Ragnarok, when it was coming out, I thought, man, this is probably going to cause some complications because if it doesn't meet the expectations, I wonder how I'm going to feel. And behold, I jinxed myself. Ragnarok did not meet my expectations. There were areas where the game fell short. Now, you know what's crazy? The areas where it fell short are not any of the areas that you would probably expect other than just maybe one or one and a half, not even two, just one and a half of the areas of the game. I'll talk about them, but I also want to talk about the areas of the game that stand out, that are stellar, and actually give credit to the developers for making a very solid, sequel and entry into the gaming world. So you think about all of this and you say, what could be the issues and what could be the great, points that stand out? Well, number one, mechanics-wise, God of War Ragnarok is a solid game. I know it's not common for people to talk about things like solid animations in a video game, or solid sound cues, or gameplay mechanics that are actually satisfying and actually sit there and marvel or revel over those things. Well, I'm going to do that. Why? Because I'm someone who's learning game development. I've been learning for the past 2 years plus. And in seeing video games that actually get the job done and knowing how tasking the process is, my appreciation is more heightened than just, say, a regular gamer, because I've actually put my hands to the work. I've actually sweat, suffered, and had sleepless nights trying to replicate things like these, that I really do have a different level of appreciation to those who were able to accomplish it. And that's basically what it is. Level design in this game, quite solid. Now, some levels are kind of weird because they are actually bigger. I think they were going for a bigger way of doing things, and it probably would have benefited from keeping things as simple as possible. You know the saying, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. I hope that they learn that, sometimes bigger ain't always better. But they did promise us that we were going to be visiting the other realms. And so I guess that's what we signed up for when we actually bought the game. So there's no harm, no foul. I just thought it probably got to a place where it was really too much. In regard to combat, the combat mechanics in this game are pristine, solid. They brought back a lot of things from the first game that made it work. They introduced and improved upon some other things where if you go back and play the first game, you'd be like, oh, I can't believe that this was not in the first game in the first place, because I still play the first game. I go to, Muspelheim and I play a lot of the, trials, and I still do some of the warm-ups just from time to time because they're actually a lot of fun. So in this game, it's going to be in Niflheim, and I think Muspelheim might have it, but I haven't played anything past just the end of the story, and I think I'm about 30-something hours into the game. So hopefully I'll be coming back for a lot more trials and trying to do a lot more puzzles and finish up a lot of the exploration, which is where I thought this game really did have some level of weakness. The exploration felt a little bit too tedious in a sense. You see, when you were exploring the world, in quote, and following the regular progression, they kind of almost forgot that you're actually progressing through the game, and almost at every turn, you faced an obstacle. And the obstacle, in my opinion, was nice to be able to have some of those to deal with, but I felt at some point it got too excessive, which is really strange because, the game does have the need to be able to at least make the story not feel too linear, because that's what it's a linear story. But you don't really want it to feel super linear, so everyone's like maybe, in a sense bored. But then I think they went ahead and they probably maybe compensated too much, and then it got strange overall. Because there is a lot of exploration in the game because of all the different realms that are available for you to play. You have Vanaheim now, you have Svartal, hey my goodness. The one that starts with an S, because some days I can say it and some days I cannot say Svartalfheim. And then you also have the possibility of even going into Niflheim, but in a different, paradigm. And Midgard is now different. So different areas of those maps that have now opened up. So those things are already available for everyone to be able to go back and, maybe pick up on things that they left or missed behind. And there's a lot of it available to get done in the game. And so I was very shocked that even with the complexity and the depth of places like Alfheim and Vanaheim, that they still needed to make us maybe still sweat or suffer just to walk through a simple door for the most part in the game. But again, it's something that you can do, and sometimes there's a benefit to doing those puzzles. You maybe find something pretty cool and you move on and progress with the game. And so all of these things overall, when it comes to the gameplay mechanics and the basics and the core portion of God of War Ragnarok, I think a lot of things are actually just solid and well done. The weakness and what makes everything very complicated is the story. The story in the first game left a lot of questions unanswered. So on coming to the second game, I can see how the developers decided or felt it necessary to answer a lot of questions, which was probably what made the game feel really sluggish in many areas, especially when you had to play as Atreus or where you had some cutscenes that felt somewhat unnecessary in the overall game. Story beats that we as players could have just easily filled in the blanks for seem to be super explained every single time. And in the explanation, wanting to be like, say, maybe movie-based type cinematic presentation, it missed out some of those really cool opportunities that the story could have been told in a more masterful way. So I guess it's probably maybe the experience of the team wanting to delve into some of the cinematic sides and not necessarily knowing all of its tricks and trades, and that kind of just exposed them a little bit. They could have done a lot less with a lot of the talking and the characters basically having to just throw out random lines every single time over very minimal, inconsequential things. But again, this is just a personal preference of mine, but I did think it dragged the game a lot. In fact, there was this one spot with Atreus where you kind of just walked around and picked up fruit. Now, I can understand that that's a gameplay mechanic or that's something that they wanted to showcase, but I thought it really took the game to a place where it was kind of excessive. But enough of the negative sides. You don't want to let the perfect be the enemy of the good. And I think that's something that eventually, as the game was going on, I had to come to realize. God of War Ragnarok is a game that the developers intended for us to play differently. You see, this is where you actually have to try to perceive the intention of the developers. It's not as easy, and it's not something a lot of gamers really want to spend the time doing. We just want to come home and play a game, but as somebody who wants to respect game development and actually appreciate and acquire the skill and more knowledge regarding it, I have to actually put myself in a situation where I can do this on the fly. Unfortunately, it took me about 20 something hours into God of War Ragnarok to finally knock my senses back into focus to say, how do the devs want us to play this game? And I think they wanted us to play this game from a heavy story focus initially, where you experience a story, you go in there, and you just get yourself immersed in all of the different elements that the world has to bring. This is why they expanded the world as they expanded the story and the storytelling. The first game, yes, they wanted us to engage in the story, but it was also expedient for them to have us engage in the combat, the level design, the mechanics, because it was a new reboot. So everything had to be scaled and balanced in a specific way. You had story, you had enough of it. You had combat, you had enough of it. You had exploration, you had enough of it. Here, you had story, you had a lot of it. And that was something that really threw me off. But once I realized this, it really made things much better. Mimir started to sound funnier. Kratos started to sound inspiring. And Atreus started to sound less annoying, I guess. So when you put all this stuff together, you can definitely see the intent of the developers is actually something that's quite solid and admirable. The challenge, though, is it really did give me a trashy experience for the very first few hours, or at least the very majority of the game, or majority of the time I was playing the game, because that's not something that I tuned in. I went in with a 2018 mindset, only to then somewhere realize, like, no, this game is not to be played like 2018 for the most part, until you've at least decided how you want to go ahead and engage with the game overall. But I think at the end of the day, the game is actually a solid game. I hope Sony Santa Monica can continue to make stories that are actually good, but learn and understand that even if you're making a sequel, you can also do and balance the way your storytelling is. Maybe they need to take notes from Software, not only in, say, using their methodology of combat and open world exploration, which they actually have said that they took, some considerations of back in the day, how the, Souls games were actually put in place. If you get what I mean, there are articles that actually, showcase this stuff, where the developers and the combat designers were talking about how, they enjoyed games like Bloodborne and the Souls games. And, their God of War games seem to have been something that they, considered the Souls games while making, maybe not to mimic or at least be the same. And maybe Elden Ring might have a formula that they could actually take some of and put in their games. So using cinematics, using storytelling beats that they're used to and good at, and also using a lot of the world to tell the lore. Because yes, the cinematics are wonderful. The music is great. All of that stuff is amazing. But sometimes it's okay to just tell the story using other gameplay elements. And I think if they find the fusion, they're really going to be an unbeatable studio and an unbeatable team when it comes to game development. So if you ask me what my ranking for God of War Ragnarok is, I'm going to tell you that the ranking is it's my fault. That's why I said it's complicated, because I should have at least understood that for a game that I like and a game that I was looking forward to, I probably needed to approach the game in a different mindset so that I could enjoy or get the very best part of the game overall. But in terms of the core aspects of the game, where the combat, the mechanics, the level design, the traversal, and other things lie, the game is a 10 out of 10. In terms of how it was presented overall as an overall package, there is an unbalance that the story and some of the exploration did use to tilt the game. And so it brings that rating to somewhere around an 8.7 to maybe a 9 out of 10 without any qualms overall. So maybe I need to get this game a replay, but I'm not going to be doing it anytime soon. In fact, I told myself sometime at the 20-hour mark or so that I was not interested in playing the game a second time. But once I made that change to enjoy the story and just focus on that, I started to find myself warming up a little bit more to wanting to give the game a second playthrough, which is actually a very good thing. And like I said, the game itself and the studio itself are good at what it is that they do. So this is probably something where I strongly believe that you're going to learn a very complicated lesson. The bigger your game grows, the bigger your fandom grows, the more and more people are just going to basically start to find a lot of different requirements to just throw in there and just make your life more complicated as a game developer who wants to try to serve its community very well. But good job to Sony Santa Monica. Whether the game is Game of the Year or not, that's going to be up to the votes or up to the award, whatever it is. But it is what it is. I mean, who cares about Game of the Year? It's only games that you actually paid for and games that you enjoy that I think will be Game of the Year to you. Thanks so much for watching the video. Let me hear your thoughts in the comment section. How did you approach the game, and how did you perceive the game, and how did the game come off to you? Talk to you all soon. Peace out.